We're gonna have a TV party tonight. Alright! We're gonna have a TV party, alright! Tonight!
We've got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Everybody's gonna hang out here tonight!
Alright!
We'll pass out on the couch. Alright!
Tonight! We got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews. Don't talk about anything else. We don't want to know. We're dedicated to our favorite shows.
And tonight, our favorite show, as it has been for a few seasons now, Fuller House, Season 4, brought to you by the good people at Netflix and Jeff Franklin. Of course, joining me tonight, as he has for the previous shows, is the punchy pugilist, Mr. Toxic Masculinity himself, ladies and gentlemen, Pat Mullin. How do you do, sir?
I don't know anything that says toxic masculinity any more than Fuller House, so have mercy.
So, as I said before, we've talked about the previous seasons of this show. We did Season 3, which dealt with, much of it dealt with the off-again, on-again relationships and the subsequent breakup of Steve's marriage between DJ Matt and Steve. We covered the first 2 seasons, and so we're going to keep moving right along here with Season 4. The big cliffhanger at the end of Season 3 was that Kimmy was going to be the surrogate to Stephanie's baby. A little weird, but that's okay. They successfully impregnated her, and so here we are at Season 4, and Kimmy is fully pregnant. And before the end of the season, we will have a baby. So let's talk about it. Let's get the overall impressions out of the way first. Season 4. What'd you think? Did you like it more than the previous seasons? Like it less? Like it about the same?
I actually think they did a lot of good things in this season that we've kind of been waiting for or anticipating in the past ones. I think where we got a little bit stagnant in terms of character growth, this took a good step forward in a lot of respects to multiple characters and their development. Particularly Jackson, I felt really grew pretty well in this. And I think even though it tried to balance the wholesome family happy ending with some real life situations, it did it better in certain respects than Full House did as a show, but it still kind of irked me that certain scenarios had to play out with a somewhat happy ending when we would have actually probably been more happy with that didn't get resolved in a perfect way. Good.
I will tell you what I liked about this season is that many of the actors that we complained about previously, Max being a big example of this, actually I thought they gave better performances this season. Jackson was less silly, and I thought he really, I agree with you, I thought he stepped into his own. I thought Max finally learned to stop yelling at the camera, and he wasn't quite as flamboyant this season as he has been. I felt like he was a real character and not, trying to go for some sort of joke personality. The other thing I liked about this season was it wasn't necessarily as focused on DJ and her trying to find the love of her life as it has been for the past 3 seasons. It's like they finally put that storyline to bed, more or less. And while enough of it deals with her and Steve that you never truly lose sight of that, it isn't the main focus of this season. The main focus of this season was Stephanie and Kimmy. But because they took the focus off of DJ as such, it left room for there to be some significant character growth and some interesting stories for other characters. The other thing I will note about this season was, I think, except for the prom, there were no major cringe moments for me. Like, I binge watched this in 2 days, and I only had to fast forward through it once, and it was when Jackson was making fun of Rocky at the prom, and of course she's standing right behind him, and it was unbearable. But the rest of it, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's only one real episode that I could do without this whole season. And even then it had little moments in it where I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I really, the overall purpose of it was like, why did we have to have this? And that's the 70s cruise.
Oh, really? I thought it was Ghosted. I enjoyed the 70s cruise. As a matter of fact, the picture I chose for the podcast tonight was them in their Charlie's Angels gear.
I mean, I can't hate anything with Lee Majors, so...
It does look. There's no growth in that episode. It doesn't add anything to the narrative. It was purely. It was kind of, as we like to say when we talk about the Voltron series. It's the Voltron goes to the mall episode. It was there for fun. It was there to have fun with the characters. I mean, clearly the three lead ladies enjoy doing stuff with each other, and I don't mean that in a sexual way. Enjoy doing stuff with each other where they don't have to worry about the narrative as such, so they can just goof off on screen. And that is certainly where the one who plays Kimberly shines.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that there's real chemistry there between all three female leads is a big boost to a lot of what they do in each episode. I don't think it would necessarily work, and I think they did a better job balancing not necessarily having to have them all together at the same time, taking them and almost like, and take a drink everybody, here comes a wrestling reference, when you work a triple threat match, you generally work it as one person gets phased out, the other two work, then you phase one other one out, and the other one comes back in, and then they have high spots involving all three. That's kind of the writing balance you have to achieve when you have three female lead characters and these interactions.
What this season did, I think, better than any other season, I think because of out of necessity, given what they wrote for the characters, is it took a lot of the focus off of DJ and Stephanie and DJ and Kimberly, and a lot of this was the Kimberly-Stephanie show, which I liked. You know, look, I like Cameron Bure is fine, and I like the DJ character, but 3 seasons where she was the focus, we can do something else. She didn't need to be the singular focus of season 4. I think that would have dragged the show down and would have been boring. You'd have had me here going, this is same old shit, and I'm starting to wonder why we're doing this. They smartly took the spotlight off of her and said, we've done enough here. Let's move on to something else. And they did. You know, I enjoyed the chemistry between Stephanie and Kim, and and them dealing with the baby. I will say this: the first couple of episodes where Stephanie is all over Kimberly about the baby, and she's being sort of a mother hen, and she's everything is having to be perfect for the baby. I'm like, this is going to get fucking old real quick. And if they don't fix it, I may not be able to get through this season. And luckily they ran the joke into the ground, but once they did, they stopped. And then they didn't really ever go back to it, which I thought was good. No,
they were like, okay, man, she finally gets it that you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
So we're just going to move away from this now.
So I had a couple of really emotional reactions to this show. The first one was actually in the first episode, Oh My Santa, where what got me, and now, I mean, I'm going to go with lucky. Sure. I've been lucky enough to have both my biological parents in my life. Neither of them died. They never got divorced.
They're still, be so lucky.
They're still alive. And so I don't know why this affected me the way that it did, except that given the nature of my profession and training and just my general sense of being, I tend to be overly empathetic. But when Max started talking about missing his dad and how it was affecting his enjoyment of Christmas, I was sad for the kid. It broke me up pretty badly. What did you? Go ahead.
If I could armchair quarterback your reaction to that a little bit, or armchair therapist,
that'd be my best.
Here's the thing: you're a dad now. You have a son that's not that much younger than Max. I think maybe you saw things as how would Jonas react if I was not around, and For those who don't know, Mark has had a couple health scares, and he's come through, thankfully, and survived them. But they were very real scares to his long-term health.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't think I consciously knew that at the time, but now that you mention it, yeah, I get broken up whenever I think about the possibility that I might not be there for my children. So, knock on wood, cancer's still in remission, but life is long and weird. So you're right. Now, did you have any reaction to Max's? And then I actually want to stay on Max for a little bit. But did you have any reaction to Max's reaction to seeing the other children with their dads at Christmas and how that affected him?
It was the most normal and understandable writing he's ever gotten as a character in terms of making him relatable to other children and to give him a perspective for adults watching the show to understand him a little more than as, we always talk about the yelling kid who is very flamboyant. This made him feel like a real person, a real character, with an emotionally driven story that I think pretty much anybody can understand. And so they started off very strong in terms of character growth with a character who we haven't seen grow over the past 3 seasons. This was a big step in the right direction for where they're going to eventually take Max as the show progresses.
Let's, as I said, let's stay on Max for a little bit. We can come back to some of our thoughts on Kimberly and Stephanie, but Max was a pretty big focus of this season here and there, and I really thought for the first time, as I said earlier, they toned him down and they actually made him a person. He wasn't kind of a walking sight gag. He wasn't doing the I'm so, the Dot from Animaniacs, I'm cute bit all the time. I felt like the things that, there's the episode where he builds the Rube Goldberg machine and it, malfunctions, and the one where he's running for president against his girlfriend. And through all of these, I felt like, wow, the kid himself gave solid performances. He had a tendency to take me out of the show with what he was doing, and we talked about that in previous TV parties. This time around, I felt like he was able to keep it within the lines. He was able to give believable performances, and I actually enjoyed his character for the first time in 4 seasons.
Yeah, I think I mentioned at the top, I think there was a lot of growth taken within the characters themselves. Max not being an exception to that. He stopped dressing like a boy preacher, and again, the gimmick of yelling and saying not really witty things, more creepy things, from my perspective, is gone, and he became a very real, flawed character who has to learn from a lot of mistakes he made.
All right, so I've been sort of swerving all over the road here. I brought it up, and then I went to Max. Why don't you give me your thoughts on the relationship between Stephanie and Kimberly this season, and what did you think of this was the A story, if you will. This was the big arc, was them dealing with Kimberly's surrogate pregnancy.
Yeah, I would call this the A plot. Really, what I think is great is that they've kind of been the support poles for DJ over the past 2 seasons more so, until they developed this pregnancy storyline at the very end of season 3. And with this focus of the show shifting from solely being, here's Candace Cameron and 8 supporting characters in the B plot, and the A plot solely to Candace, now they're shifting from that, giving other characters a chance to shine. And I think there was enough interplay and banter between Kimmy and Stephanie through the past 2 years. And for people who watched the show years ago, there was a lot of really good banter between them that you wanted to see it develop a little more. And now that they're adults versus when they were kids kind of sniping at each other and eventually becoming better friends as kids when DJ got involved with Steve, it's a very fun transition to see that happen again where, again, Steve is in the picture now, and he's, priority 2 in DJ's life behind her kids. So where does that leave Kimmy and Stephanie, who are her best friend and her sister? Well, they've got each other now, besides their beaus, so they need best friend time. And they find it with each other out of necessity initially because of the pregnancy. But you do feel a fondness and a warmth grow. And I forget what the line is in the 5th episode, but it was basically Kimmy coming to Stephanie and telling her that she almost doesn't want to give birth to the baby because she's enjoyed them becoming the friends they've become, and that's going to end when she has the baby. And Stephanie kind of confirms, like, no, this isn't like when we were kids. You're my friend for life now. You're having my baby.
Yeah, I really, there was definitely some solid chemistry between the two. It was fun to watch them together up until the very end when they did the bit with the chili, and they were going to sit on the couch and watch Beaches together. I'm interested to see. There's a lot of grist for the mill here because Kimberly has a tendency to meddle, be over the top, boundaryless. One might say personality disordered, and it's Stephanie's baby, and so I think they alluded to it. They didn't go too far because they don't want to make Kimberly seem that to be a crazy villain. But there's definitely that twinge of in season 5, are we going to see Kimberly and Stephanie have some tension over who the mother figure really should be? The one who birthed him, or Stephanie. I think there's an undercurrent of that, and I'm very interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah, I could very easily see the scenario of Kimmy kind of holding over Stephanie's head that, you have this baby because I had it for you, and, using that to her advantage in scenarios and that type of thing, which is crappy, but, they'll, I'm sure, do a reveal where Kimmy's intentions are somewhat honorable and all's forgiven, and yay.
Did they make Stephanie's boyfriend in this season dumber than he was previously, or was he about the same level of dumb? Because there were a couple of times, I'll give one example. When Fernando's mother visits, I'm looking at him, I'm like, you seem like they're giving you the Homer Simpson treatment. Like, you keep getting dumber. But then he would have these moments where he seemed competent and thoughtful. There was the bit where DJ, it was the dodgeball episode, where, DJ is trying to warn Stephanie that if you don't make your demands as such, your needs known, he's going to continue to do for himself, and he won't be there for the baby the way you need him to. And then, all turns out not to be true. He gives up a gig. He makes it known that he is very much in tune with what's happening, and that he very much also wants to be there. And he ends up proposing to Stephanie at the end. So like there's
and
those.
Then he goes and gets a sandwich.
Well, then there's the sandwich bit. But I guess my point is, what did you think? Do you think they made him dumber this season, or about the same level?
From my recollection, I would really have to go back and watch season 3 again. He wasn't exactly painted as a savant there. But there's stuff like in the first episode of this season where it's the Christmas episode, and DJ says something along the lines of, or I'm telling Santa, and I think Jimmy's reaction is one of, but not the real Santa, right?
Yeah. I believe at one point he actually yells out Santa Claus with a Y.
Yeah, when it's Joey, and then he goes, "Oh, right, Joey."
We don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time focusing on him. You brought up Jackson before, so tell me about Jackson. What did you? He was definitely for me one of the generators of the most cringe-worthy moments of previous seasons, and this one. They toned him down, too. He was actually very sympathetic. He isn't the clown that he was in previous seasons. I like the fact that they gave him kicking a football as a talent, and him being on the football team, because it started with that in a few seasons past, but that was the joke there was he's a klutz and he'll never make it in football. I liked his relationship with Rocky. I thought, even to the point where he blows it by making fun of her, but then they, for whatever reasons, and they don't really explain it, are resolved by the end of the season.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to go back to it or not. If they'll ever explain that. Would she get baby fever all of a sudden? But like, hey, your aunt had a baby. I forgive you for humiliating me. Sure. But most of it, Jackson wasn't nearly as putsy as he's been in previous seasons. The actor himself, I thought, gave more believable performances.
Yeah, I think he had a good arc here. I think, and aside from just the football thing, he went to his first high school party and got drunk, which is a very real scenario for any kid who's ever been in high school. Yours truly, for example. In fact, I did not wait for high school to go to my first high school party and get drunk and get caught summarily.
Oh no!
That's how it happens.
Yeah, anyone who went to high school with me knows that when there was alcohol around, I would get tore up from the neck up.
Yeah, that happens pretty much to everybody who has a social life in high school and wants to score some points. We've all done it. It happens, but I think now what I'm talking about when they're a little more realistic with the scenarios, you have Max not being able to celebrate Christmas with his dad. This is another real-world scenario that happens a lot, and rather than it happen to the friend of the lead character or, the things we used to see in the 80s where, if this was Growing Pains, Boner would have got drunk instead of Mike.
I was thinking of Dudley and the wine in the basement.
Oh, and the child molester?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, too, except for the molestation not being a part of us yet. I'm sure it's coming at some point for a very special Full House, but, so, and then what did he do? He didn't call home, he called, Fernando, who's basically playing the role of uncle to him, and living in the house and trying to score points that they had established this relationship. So he calls him to try to not have it, exposed to his mom, which is something a lot of us would do if we had the option. And I liked the way it was played out. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed him growing into his own, but not totally getting over buffoonery immediately, as we talked about with the Rocky incident at prom, where he's still enough of a buffoon to give in to that peer pressure and do that because he's not secure enough in himself yet to say, hey, no, this is my date, this is my girl, I like her, shut up or I'm going to kick you with my golden toe.
Just to keep on that particular issue with the party and everything, what I liked about that was, up to that point, Fernando, and we're going to talk a little bit more about him in just a minute, but, Fernando up to this point was definitely played for laughs. He wasn't a serious character. He was there as more of a foil. And then this season, that stopped being the case. You're right. He kind of becomes the Joey of the house. Of this generation of Fullers, of characters in the Full House, and which I liked. I actually like that he's now not just a clown; that he's an actual part of the family. I mean, he's not necessarily living there; he lives next door, but he's pretty much there all the time.
No, and it was much better use of him than what we've seen.
But there's a great conversation that takes place between DJ and him about, I'm his mother, you don't get to make parenting decisions. If my kid's in trouble, you have to tell me. And then she has to come around later and not necessarily eat crow, but she definitely has to take it back just a little bit because she realizes that Fernando had good intentions and that he is part of the family, and she relented. Which I'm like, okay, finally. And deservingly so. The guy's been there for that family, more so than just, a horny Latino guy chasing after Kimmy. He has been an effective male role model on the show. And I think they finally acknowledged it with that episode, but not without some, not without some trial and angst leading up to it. So I thought she had a very real reaction, and then a real reconsideration of his role.
Yeah, agreed. And I think he was used well. Besides that, in other episodes too, where and even when he's played for laughs, it's not to the extreme buffoonery level that we've seen before. Like, they have the episode where DJ and Steve are coerced into celebrating their 2-week anniversaries by Kimmy and Fernando, and Fernando's like trying to guide Steve through this, but he does it in a way where he's not a complete idiot. It's funny enough, and you understand the intent without it going so far into ridiculousness. And I actually liked it. I thought it was played fairly well between the two of them. And there's a good moment in that episode where Steve comes over and Fernando's the one who welcomes him in and says, it is always open. And Steve comes in and he goes, "You don't live here." He goes, "Yes, I know, but it is always open." And then Max comes in and they talk to Max for a second, and he walks out and Steve goes, "I would say something, but honestly, that kid scares me." And Fernando just goes, "Yes, he does that."
I also thought Jackson and Ramona had a great a growing brother sister relationship, more so than in previous seasons, which makes sense. That's it's three seasons later. But I'll tell you, they have some weird tension between them. Like, I know they're.
You noticed that too, okay?
Yeah, there's been some long looks at each other, and I'm like, ooh, are they going to end up together? We were once brother and sister, and now we're something more. Is that what's happening here?
Are we getting Greg and Marcia?
Is that what happened?
Not actually, but
okay.
Yeah, that's the running thing. Is that it's very clear that Greg and Marcia were sexually attracted to each other during filming.
Ah, gotcha.
And I think he did actually bang after.
Fantastic. But yeah,
Good for you guys.
I'll be curious. They didn't do much with Ramona though this year. She was the focus of a lot of storylines in the previous 3 seasons, and and this time around, she had the one episode with Ghosted, which I actually could have done without. I didn't think it really added to anything. That's the one where the A plot is DJ and Steve are competing for their 2-week anniversary, which of course there's a lot of sight gaggery and absurdity. But but the B plot is her.
She was really kind of second banana to Jackson this year in a lot of those Jacksons.
Yeah, she seemed to be a sounding board for more of Jackson's stuff, and she never really had her own storyline. In the previous seasons, a lot of it dealt with her dancing and whatnot, and her kind of getting used to the family. And here, she's kind of, she's there to play the kind of almost the straight man to Jackson, which I thought was weird.
That voice of reason.
I liked it. I don't. The actress who plays Ramona is fine. I don't. There's she. Not everybody can be in the A plot, I guess, and so somebody's stuff has to get cut, and she was one of those people who kind of suffered for the shift in focus this season.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Sometimes, how can we miss you if you don't go away? Is the line, and she's had a lot of good focus through the first 3 years of the show. And I feel like after this season, we're wanting more of that as opposed to the feeling we had with DJ stories where let's kind of take away some DJ. I can do without as much DJ this year as we had last year.
Well, since you mentioned her, let's check off that box. So, even though Matt is still a part of the season, still part of the show, and we'll talk about him in a minute. She finally chose Steve. Steve came back from working with the Lakers, and that's it. They just date. Their relationship goes no further than they enjoy each other's company, they date, and that's kind of it, and we're on to other things, which I thought was a smart choice considering how much time they've spent with this. I really enjoy Steve as a character because there was a tendency to kind of make him, when you have Matt, who is this, alpha male type character, there was a tendency to sort of make Steve the antithesis of that. But I thought they gave Steve a lot of manly qualities. He's the one that fixes the car. He's cooking steaks on said car. He's integrated pretty well with the family. He is, and they did away with the sight gag of him being all about sandwiches, except for the one time with an actual sandwich. So I thought for what they did with him and DJ, I thought that all worked pretty well. And as far as DJ this season, I mean, she's the star of the show. So what can one say? But I thought they gave her just enough to say, hey, you still get top billing, but no more than that, so that you could focus on some other characters, which I thought was the right balance.
Agreed. It's the same, and it is funny how much this show really mirrors a lot of its predecessor, in that they had to do that with Bob Saget. Now, initially, it wasn't so much the case as the initial show. They had top billing was given to John Stamos because he was a heartthrob, and he was the eye candy for the show that was going to get an audience in. But a lot of the early stories, more than anything, were built around Bob Saget learning how to be single dad. Even though he wasn't technically single dad, he had a support system there. But it was a lot of that, and while it was never a ratings bonanza, it was consistent enough where it found an audience, but that audience grew when the series was less about, 7 out of 10 episodes being based around Bob and getting maybe 4 episodes based around Bob and the rest of them more evenly spread around the cast.
Sure. And I think, if you were to measure charisma, John Stamos certainly has charisma for days, certainly much more so than Bob Saget. And then when they started pairing John Stamos and Dave Coulier together, and there was a lot of episodes that revolved around just the two of them, for whatever their reasons were, I thought that was always a good audience grabber.
Right, and that's what we see. That's what we see with Kimmy and Stephanie now.
Right. Anything else about Steve you want to talk about? And I'll tell you what, we can extend this to Matt as well. Let me just say this about Matt: the episode where he's actively fighting with DJ and they're competing. I'm glad it ended in one episode, because if that had gone on for more than that, I don't think I could have dealt with it.
No.
Matt didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason to suddenly turn him into a dark, villainous character. And
yeah, he took a real hard left turn into heel town.
Yeah, and I it was one of the disagreements I had with the writing of this is this doesn't add up. I mean, yes, we get that he's angry with DJ because DJ basically yanked his chain and then and humiliated him as she humiliated CJ in Japan. But Jesus Christ,
Can we talk about CJ for a second?
You know what? Go ahead.
If there's one thing that bothered me more than anything in this show, it's that they resolved the relationship between CJ and DJ. And I'm just like, no. I don't care how not intentionally terrible of a person DJ is. There is no way, no how, no scenario in which CJ will forgive her for doing what she did.
Agreed. I thought that was a way of unnecessarily. I don't think the audience was never not with DJ. I don't think people watching the show. Look, if you're so mad that DJ broke up that wedding and you think DJ is written as a shit character because she couldn't figure out who she loved fast enough to where it affected all these other people, I would imagine those people just stopped watching the show. Like there's nothing left here. There's nothing left here. They've moved on.
And I would agree with that. But if you felt the need to tie up that end, have DJ do what she did. Be very apologetic. Be empathetic. Try to make amends as much as she can. and still have CJ just spit in her face.
Yeah, look, CJ could have very easily said, I will never give you a hard time, and I will not go out of my way to hurt you, even though that is exactly what you did to me. But I will never forgive you. We will be decent, but we will not be friends. And leave it at that. That's all she needed to say. And I would have been with her as an audience member. I'd have been sympathetic. The fact that CJ, DJ basically begs her for forgiveness, and she just sort of goes. I feel like she almost did a mental calculation of, our kids are friends, but I might as well.
Yeah.
Life's too long to hate this much. Which I agree with, and oftentimes a place I come to myself in my personal life, life's too long to hate this much, and I just kind of get over things because I don't want to hold on to it. But I've never also had my wedding broken up by some whore.
And I also suffer from Irish Alzheimer's, where I only remember grudges.
We are in some ways very similar, in a lot of other ways couldn't be more dissimilar, you and I. But that's what's fun about this.
Toxically masculine, folks.
That's right. Yeah, I that annoyed me with CJ, but I mean, we're talking they kind of resolved the issue, and it's tied to the fact that Max and her daughter are in a thing together, and then you never see her again. So it's like, it isn't like
that's the other part of it that bothered me. We never see her again. Why did we need to do this if there was going to be no purpose to it long term?
I have to tell you, I have to be. It has to be there's a producer or somebody on set that said, "Hey, unless you resolve this by making DJ a little bit more favorable, there's always going to be this coat of shit on her for having broken up this woman's wedding." And it's and unfortunately, there's a tendency in this show to make DJ as pure as the driven snow, unnecessarily.
It's always open.
We were talking about Matt and Steve. I just want to close the book on them real quick. I said before, it was really unnecessary to make Matt suddenly a very heelish character, and thankfully they got over it fast enough to where it didn't tear down the whole show. Because if this was going to be more than one episode, I'd had a real problem with it.
And then to top it off and make him, more likable again, they were like, how can we make him seem less terrible? Let's give him Gia, who is the epitome of terrible. So he just seems like a poor guy making a terrible decision.
Yeah, they went out of their way. In the previous seasons, I always felt like DJ was, harping on their childhood relationship a little too much, and Gia wasn't as bad as she was making her out to be. And then it was as if the writers said, hold our beer, and we're like, let's make her a raving drunk this season.
Yeah, let's have her spike the punch at her child's prom.
Yeah. I kept waiting for that episode to end with Gia getting into a DUI, some sort of car accident.
Again.
Yeah.
To again bring things back to the original show.
Yeah, I don't mind Gia as a character, as a foil for DJ, and I often think DJ needs to loosen up a bit as a character.
Yes, it's fun to see her get her feathers ruffled.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. It's like we want to make Matt a little bit more sympathetic, so let's give him this drunken whore as a girlfriend. Sure, way to go. All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. I enjoy Matt as a character. I was on Team Matt, but such is life. This season, I enjoyed Steve more so than in previous seasons. He seemed like less of a milksop and more of a man, which I was appreciative of. Right men as men. We'll get to that again shortly. Any last
I write
thoughts?
my own stuff, Mark.
Any last thoughts on Steve, Matt at all?
No, I think we're good to go. I pretty much echo what you say about Steve, who I haven't talked about, but he was given much more in terms of not looking like a complete loser.
Yeah.
And almost like they were like, okay, she picked him. let's justify it by making him not terrible.
Yeah. Let's not make him a milksop this season. Speaking of milksops, I had completely forgotten that at the end of season 3, Danny moved back into the house. And it wasn't until they mentioned it, like, in episode, like, 2 or 3, where DJ's like, I can't wait to have my room back, and Dad moves back out again. I'm like, oh, that's right, he's living there now for whatever the reasons were. They did nothing with it. There's the one sight gag about him going to Costco too much, and then that's it, and then he gets a job and he moves back out again. I'm like, huh? Is it me, or was that a wasted opportunity?
Like, just the expedience of how it was done. He realizes his purpose is mediation and talking through things, because he helps, DJ and Matt get through this, whatever their beef is, as far as, their breakup and the business tactics that they're using, et cetera, and just based on that, he goes and just gets his job back. And, like, God, that was all we did with this?
Yeah.
He had a 30-second conversation with Matt in the kids' room, and now he's repurposed in life. He's stopping his Costco, binge runs.
I don't even think he showed up until, it was the second... Yeah, he's not in the Christmas episode.
The third episode. I don't even remember him... I don't remember him in the second one. Because the second one is when they're going to have their second, or, whatever it is, first date, DJ and Steve. Mm-hmm. I don't remember seeing him in that either.
Right. Yeah. This is the one where they spent half the... Which was cute, by the way. Their first date, where most of it spent in traffic, was adorable. And they're just eating burgers under the stars by the end of it. But, yeah, the A plot there was DJ and Steve on the date. The B plot was Stephanie mother henning Kimberly, and then the C plot was Jackson telling Rocky he wants to be in a relationship and not just be fuck buddies, essentially. For lack of a better phrase, I understand that's not actually what's happening, but you know the deal.
Yeah, good call, Jackson. Not,
but. Yeah, he doesn't show back up again until fucking episode 3. I thought there was a lot of opportunity for comedy with, Danny being in the house and the house being overcrowded, and it was like one episode, they said it, they spiked it, we were done, and they moved on to something else.
Even if you didn't have a substantial role for him in the first 2 episodes, one of which seems silly because it's Christmas. Why would he not be involved in family Christmas? But the second part, even if you didn't have anything in the second role, why don't you just have a sight gag where you walk by him sleeping in the alcove or something?
Right.
Oh, hey, Dad. Hey, Uncle Danny. Hey, Grandpa Danny. Oh, hey. And just go back to sleep. So at least it's you, like, oh, yeah, he's there. And then third episode, bam, it's the actual Danny story.
Right. Yeah, I thought they really wasted Bob Saget. By the way, I know they're never going to make Danny... They're never going to give Danny any of the attributes of Bob Saget doing stand-up. But there's a part of me that wants to see him have a nervous breakdown and do that bit.
And just turn into Bob Saget. That ain't right, Bob Saget.
Yeah, I want that in the worst way. And it's never going to happen. I'm never going to get it. But, given the kind of show this is, they're not going to take chances with him doing what he did in that special. But I remember that. I remember after Full House ended, and then I think he left America's Funniest Home Videos, and so he has no family friendly gigs. And I often bring up Kevin Kline talking about the HBO doing comedy for the first time, and that they can curse, and him wasting the opportunity to curse by just yelling out "fuck" randomly. I feel like no one ever truly utilized the HBO stage until Bob Saget did That Ain't Right. Oh boy. But he truly embraced his freedom to do whatever the hell he wanted to do on stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, anybody who only knew him as, America's dad at that point, wow, did you get hit with a left hook.
Yeah. As Jim Jeffries said, how disappointing this evening's performance must be. They utterly wasted Bob Saget. It's one of the negatives about this season. If you're going to have him be in the house, have him be in the house. Have him involved in things, have his presence affect the other relationships in the house, not a throwaway line that DJ's inconvenienced.
Yeah, and speaking of, maybe marginalizing or not using, I feel honestly like this was the first time where they actually did good stories with John Stamos.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that, but I wanted to talk about John Stamos is always good, and it's his show. He's producing it, so he's not going to come off. He's never going to come off bad in any of these. Everybody else may come off bad, but he's going to shine. He's producing. But what I liked about John Stamos was, we're living, and I want to get your take on this, though I think I know what you're going to say. We're living in this time now where, as one of the characters portrayed, a little overly dependent on apps in terms of raising children, where children are overly programmed. Everything is, as the character says, no gluten, no sugar, no this, no that. And then you have John Stamos, who essentially used his opportunities in the show to do a PSA on sort of just natural parenting. Let your kid get dirty. Let them have, give them an object, a relatively safe object to play with, and let them use their imagination. Not everything has to be so strictly programmed. I would say both of us would agree with that. I'm not even going to bother asking. But it seemed like they took a time out from the natural storytelling and decided we're going to use Fuller House to deliver this message.
It's pretty accurate. I don't think I could summarize it better than that. But and it was fun to see him paired with Josh Peck, who, if you didn't watch, they had a show together for a season called Grandfathered on Fox. I actually really enjoyed it. I don't think it got a fair shake. Oh well, such is life. And that show was actually being run concurrently with the first season of Fuller House, which is why John kind of didn't know what his involvement level was going to be as a talent, as opposed to, being a production person and one of the executives, producers of the show. Now, unfortunately, Grandfathered came to an abrupt end, and that allowed him more involvement with this and with he's involved with, which I'm sure you'll do a TV party on at some point, based on the hype it's getting. But they had a pretty good chemistry on that show, and I think they had a pretty good back and forth here. And I liked that was kind of renewed. And I also, more than that, I liked his story with the Mommy and Me group.
Yeah, that was fun. I mean, hey, John Stamos is hot. News at 11.
It's just one of those things, because there's like two guys, him and Rob Lowe, who seemingly have not aged or aged more gracefully than anybody alive ever. So
I don't know. Kevin Bacon still looks okay.
Kevin Bacon has a massive head.
All right, fair enough.
And honestly, there were points in time where Kevin Bacon looked so terrible, where anything was going to be an improvement.
Oh gosh, what is the lead actor? And I think Untouchables and The Bronx Tale, Goodfellas.
Those all have different lead actors.
All right, let's try this one more time. The lead actor in Goodfellas.
Robert De Niro?
No.
Ray Liotta?
Ray Liotta. Yeah. All of the when I think about guys who have aged, Ray Liotta could not have aged more poorly. First of all, look, Ray Liotta looks like he ate fucking Joe Pesci.
Yeah, Ray. The years haven't been kind to Ray, but he did quit smoking with Chantix.
Good for him. Yeah, I'm not complaining about the storyline, and you know, look, I don't know what else was on the writers' room table that that got cut so that John Stamos could do a PSA about Jesus fucking Christ, let your kids play. It's okay to give them a donut once in a while. It does kind of come out of left field, and I'm not entirely sure how well it fits, how well it fit in with everything else. It felt shoehorned in. You know, and then especially when he invites Josh Peck back to the baby gender reveal party, and and he goes out of his way to say, this is how an old school family celebrates. And then, of course, Josh Peck does the sight gag of eating all the sugar. And it's like, I agree. Look, as a parent, I'm with you, John, but really? We needed Fuller House to deliver this message for you? Did you not feel like you could get this across any other way?
I'm okay with Fuller House delivering that message, because I think everything should be delivering that message.
Okay. You can't hear it enough, huh? It's got to somehow break through the other noise of the rest of the world.
Have you seen how kids are being raised today, Mark? Not
Listen,
to go off on a tangent, but...
No, I'm aware. Look, there was a parent that got arrested for letting their kid play alone in the park. I get it. The times they are changing.
Yeah. God, I hate today.
What's funny though? I raised, I was home with Jonas for the last couple of years up until 2018 when I had to go back to work 5 days a week. I worked prior to that. I had been doing shift work, so work 2 days, off 2 days, that sort of thing. In the days that I was off, I was home with Jonas, and I was the one taking him to Daddy and Me classes, Gymboree, that sort of thing. I never ran into this sort of thing much. I mean, now it might be because people in real life are not as ridiculous as they are on TV, and so they may have been all granola and gluten free, but they weren't in your face about it. Nobody was a rude, judgmental dick, at least not openly. I didn't. The kinds of stuff that he's now. Granted, this is for the sake of television. They're upping the ante here. They're making it more visual for television's sake. But even with some of the stories that you hear these days, I just didn't run into it that much. Most people were like, "Yeah, I let my kid get dirty." I let him have a donut every now and then. Jesus Christ, we just had a birthday party for my daughter. And it's all like 7 and 8 year olds, and every one of them was drinking. My kid was the only one not drinking soda because we don't allow her to have it. So just a little bit of a side rant there. Any other thoughts on this or reactions?
No, we can move on from that.
Okay. I guess as we start to wind down here. So anybody that I didn't mention that I should have or, gave short shrift to, do we feel like we talked about Fernando enough?
Yeah, I don't... There's not anybody really, I think, who played a major role that we didn't touch on. Other than, we haven't talked about the birth itself, that episode, which we probably should, is the big finale.
Agreed. All right, so let's get to it then, and then we'll start to close out here. The big, the big birth episode. Now, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. They didn't do the joke I thought they were going to do with Kimmy kind of, wanting to grab at the baby. She just sort of pops the baby out, and Stephanie and her boyfriend have their moment, and there's the proposal and all of that. It was emotional, and I reacted, proportionately emotional to it. I was happy for the cast, and in terms of the story. I saw the bit there with Rocky holding Jackson's hand, and I was glad that at least for the moment, the things between them were resolved, because that's a couple I'm pulling for. What were your thoughts about the episode?
It was one of those things where I liked that they started doing the seed of doubting with Jimmy as a father and allowed Fernando again to be kind of that good support character and talk him up and be like, "No, man, you're going to be a great dad. Are you kidding me?" And it actually made use of Max in the same way, where all of the previous Max-Fernando interactions made me want to punch things. Mainly Max and Fernando. And it was a nice change of pace to see them in that role, and then kind of do a guy thing while the girls are supposed to be doing a girl thing. And then they do the sandwich bit.
Did the sandwich bit really bother you?
I love sandwiches.
Sure.
Probably more than most.
Okay.
In point of fact, I used to take about a 45-minute drive just for a roast beef sandwich from one particular place every now and then.
Reasonable.
However, after a pep talk about what a great father he's going to be and, all this stuff, and then getting the call while they're on the way to get said sandwiches that, hey, Kimmy's going into labor with Stephanie's baby, but that doesn't mean we have to turn around and not get sandwiches, right? That's like Dave Coulier levels of dumb.
I'm going to throw this out there. Maybe you'll judge me for it. It's fine. But I'm going to defend the writing in this with a few key points. They made a point of saying they were almost at the sandwich shop. To where I can kind of agree with it. Like, we're almost here. How much longer is this going to take, regardless of whether or not we turn around right this very second or go get the sandwiches and turn around again? And go back. Number one. Number two, I've had 2 kids. It is a lengthy process. You have time, even when the water breaks. Boy, do you have time. When my daughter was born, we went to the hospital around 10 o'clock at night. That kid was not born until well into the next morning. I'm just saying. They had time for sandwiches. And I'll tell you what, just to add a little bit more to this, people get hungry in hospitals. It's this was a lively event. People were going to be there for a while, having not fed themselves. He brought extra sandwiches. I can forgive him for that.
You can?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Well, I suppose if a dad can, I suppose I can too. But we'll see.
You thought it was beyond the pale stupid, and no normal human being reacts this way?
I did. Now, knock on wood, I've never actually had a child of my own, and hopefully never will.
Really? Okay.
No, I want no part of having a child in this world today.
Okay. I will go ahead and tell you that it is the one thing in my life that keeps me going, and it's the thing I'm most proud of. And there's nothing better than having been a father to my 2 kids. And I wouldn't give it up for anything. But
my
I'm me and
would
you're
turn
you.
into Michael Douglas falling down.
That is a great movie, by the way. What a reference.
And that's only because I'm 2 steps from doing that myself. I just have a lot of stuff going on, and I don't have the time to, walk through a construction zone and lose my job and such.
I think it was a Metal Hammer of Doom or a source material where I blurted out, and they're great for stomping queers, and I had to point out to whoever it was I was talking to at the time, that's a line from Falling Down.
Well, you had to get the waffle out, but you can't have everything.
Indeed. All right, just before we go, anything else? Do you want to talk about the silly 70s Charlie's Angels episode? Because you were one of the ones that said, well, this was if we had to cut this to 12 episodes, this was the one to cut. You want to go and rant on that a bit, or are you okay?
Listen, it had no development of any kind for any of the characters. This was the vanity episode for Candace, Jody, and Andrea to have some fun with their characters. It was, again, I can't hate anything with Lee Majors, and it was especially fun to see him with Lindsay Wagner, because we got the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, Bionic Ever After again. But I was bored to tears during this episode, because I'm not a fan generally of super over the top zany comedy like that, so it doesn't really appeal to me. Could have done without it, but Lee Majors was in it, so I can't hate it.
I enjoyed it. I feel like I said before. I think these TV shows need at least one Voltron Goes to the Mall episode just to have some fun, see the characters doing some different things. And I have to tell you, Candace Bure in her 70s Charlie's Angels bedazzled outfit. I'm not going to knock it.
Talking about people who age gracefully or not at all, Candace Cameron has just gotten prettier with age. It's really crazy. She is a beautiful lady.
Oh, she is drop-dead gorgeous. And she was an awkward-looking keen. I mean, Jodie Sweetin always looked cute, and she has maintained, that level of cuteness, and she's just got a huge rack, on top of it. So it's like, okay, she developed nicely and all of that. But yeah, Candace came from this really awkward teenage years and has become just a stunning model of a woman. Hotsy totsy. I think she's married to the hockey player, is that right?
Valeri Bure, yes.
Good for you, fella. Good for you. To make sure she stays happy.
Introduced by Dave Coulier.
Wow. Did not know that. By the way, we haven't seen much of Dave Coulier's Written in Family.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah, I was going to say, to the writers, let's keep this up, okay? Let's just have Dave Coulier showing up from Vegas every once in a while and
I'm okay
not have
if
his
we
family.
Don't even have that.
you don't need Dave Coulier in the show?
I'll trace it back to in the original Full House. I think even the writers got tired of him then because towards the last 2-3 seasons, they just really ramped up what a moron his character was.
Right.
Really well beyond, silliness, where there's an episode in, I forget if it's season 7 or season 8. It's towards the end of the original run. And they sing, Lullaby to Nikki and Alex, which are Becky and Jesse's older boys. And they find out Becky can't sing to save her life. And they're talking about how, she wants to be involved and this is a big problem. And I'll never forget this line. I don't know why. Maybe because it was just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Dave Coulier responds, "That's not a big problem. A big problem would be if your butt fell off." And I've never felt so much rage at something I probably shouldn't. But good Lord, was I triggered?
You were, because this is not the first time you've brought that up. I feel like every time we do this, you bring that up. Wow, that really left an impression on you.
I wanted to destroy everything within an 8-mile radius. I wanted to just fill with rage so completely that I turned green and tore everything except my purple pants and just wrecked shit.
All right, I don't think there's any better way to end this show, so let's end this show. At the time of this recording, I don't know if it's been renewed for a 5th season. I feel like as long as it's...
I'm sure it will be.
I was going to say, as long as it's a cheap production and not a Marvel show, and they don't have to license music, Netflix pretty much just keeps everything going.
They just raised all their prices, too, so there's more capital for them.
Yeah. So like I said, it's not a Marvel show. They don't have to license music, and it doesn't have a huge budget. So I'm sure we'll get Fuller House until John Stamos and company don't want to do this anymore. So with that said, I want to thank Pat for coming on tonight. Always a pleasure. Let's go ahead and look at the calendar here. And this Saturday, Pat and I are going to be doing a live commentary for Thurman versus Lopez, which is boxing on Fox. We're only doing
because you didn't get enough of us.
This is now. We're no longer doing the 4-1 Ground and Pound radio show. It has migrated to 4-1 Mania exclusively. So to keep in touch with the combat sports, Pat and I are going to try to do as many live commentaries as we both have time and interest for. Which I wanted to let you know, Pat. I wanted to extend the invitation to do any wrestling. If you're, if there's any wrestling you want to do live commentary over, or there's a particular show you want to do a review of, let me know. We'll write that into the schedule. That's fine. So we'll do those as there's time and interest as they come up. But yeah, any combat sport / wrestling related show you want to do a commentary or a review of, you just need to let me know, and we'll get it on the schedule. We've already got a bunch of boxing on the schedule as it is. We'll add more as the year goes forward.
Yeah, I think we've got over the next 2 weeks. I think we've got Thurman Lopez, and then did we agree to do Kovalev and Alvarez?
We did, as long as it's on regular ESPN and not ESPN Plus, because I don't have ESPN Plus.
Yeah, well, neither do I, because I'm not a douchebag. So,
so I will check the listing on that one, and if it's on TV, we'll be there.
We will be there, and I finally have a plug. So most of you guys who listen to the network know that Jesse Starcher has once again hosted the Yahoo Pro Pigskin Pick'em Pro Football Pick'em Tournament, and I told everybody this year that after being screwed by Yahoo last year, who took away a week's worth of my picks and a lot of points and essentially took me out of the running, that I would come back with a vengeance. And not only would I win the point total, but I would also have the best record in the league. Do you know what happened, Mark?
What happened, Pat?
I had not only the highest point total, but the best record in the league.
Outstanding.
So Jesse and I are going to be doing a wrap-up show this week prior to the Super Bowl on Sunday of next week. So you can listen to us. We're going to recap just the highlights and lowlights of the pick'ems, my strategy, what I did to determine things, and we'll talk about the last big news stories of the year in the NFL, not limited to Derek Carr versus Stephen A. Smith.
All right. I've had a podcast almost every day this week. We did a review of the new Papa Roach album. We did a review for Glass. On Monday, it was Source Material Penance, the redemption of Speedball. And the beat keeps on going. Tomorrow night, we're going to pop Jesse Starcher's cherry. We're going to make him sit down and watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is currently on Netflix. And we're going to do a live commentary over that. So for those of you wanting more movie commentary tracks, they're going to be coming at you hard and fast. Next week, we've got The Runaways, Volume 2. I will not be on that show, but Jesse's got a whole bunch of people that were, so check out that source material. And then we'll be talking about Runaways Season 2 on Tuesday, January 29th. Sal Ubrascato, formerly of Typo Negative, has a band called The Pale Horse Named Death, a gothic metal band. We're going to review their new album on January 30th. Andrew Graham and his lovely wife from our Canadian office will be down for a TV party tonight to discuss The Crown Season 2. In February, we've got TV parties for Voltron, Punisher, and Black Mirror Bandersnatch, and Carmen Sandiego. Alexis Hayne is going to be on for that. We've got a Damn You Hollywood for Alita Battle Angel, and an on trial for Pan's Labyrinth. So if you're looking for me and Pat, check out some of our boxing episodes. But I don't have anything. There's no TV parties for me and Pat in February as of right now. So there we go. I hate to ask, but I figured I'll throw it out there. Have you and the boys, the Casual Hero boys, even thought about maybe possibly recording something? Even maybe. Okay then.
Like you didn't know the answer to that ahead of time.
Has it even been talked about, or did you all forget that you do a podcast together?
After 3 weeks of saying, "Hey, we gonna record anything? Hey, we gonna record anything?" I stopped trying, and then it was summarily, continually ignored by Gavin, and that's pretty much where it goes. Gavin doesn't pay attention to it, and we need Chris as an engineer, and Chris has usually got one or more organs that's not working correctly, and yeah, that's it. Casual Heroes are casually deceased.
Well, you tell Jed that if he's got an itch to talk about wrestling, he knows. You two know where to find me. We'll figure something out.
I think we could even do a not wrestling show, and it would be amazing. Like, for example, we were talking once about how just because you're a bad guy doesn't mean you didn't have good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this guy who killed a lot of people, but he had some good ideas. that doesn't make the ideas less good. So,
Look,
just saying, like,
the train's running on time. It's still the train's running on time. You can't knock the hustle.
Yeah, like Porsche was a good idea. Autobahn was a good idea. Internet was a good idea.
Yep. Some of the other ideas, genocide, not so good. Terrible.
Yeah, not good. Horrible.
Overshadows everything else. But, these are things that exist in the world, as I like to say. All right. Yeah, no, in all seriousness, if you and Jed ever want to record something, nothing has to be written in stone or done on a weekly basis, but we can definitely throw some things together. I'm open to filling up the weeks with as much content as we'll have time and energy for, especially now that we no longer have the MMA show. So, with that said,
Mark, is the bass taken away from my vocals?
It's funny. I have a tendency also to just start quoting random movies, and I have to be careful with some of the stuff I say because, in mixed company who doesn't know you're quoting a movie, some of this sounds, might sound a little racist, might sound a little out of place.
Kurt, my wife is down there with an ass in her cock.
It's been such a long time since I've seen Boogie Nights. All right. Oh, by the way,
if there's some paper I didn't sign or something that I left unsigned, I'll fix it. That's what Buck's Super Stereo World is going to be about. It's about the customer.
So we took your advice. Later in the year, we're going to do a whole show dedicated to Kiss. But before that, in March, I don't know if you know this or not, but Netflix bought the rights to the Motley Crue theatrical biopic, The Dirt. And that is apparently, and we're going to be actually discussing that on March 26th, and then the next night on the Metal Hammer of Doom, Motley Crue, Greatest Hits. In case you're interested.
Yeah, this Dirt movie has been in development literally for almost 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Like, since the book came out. And at one point, like in 2005, it was really close to being a go. Like, they had people signed on, and I was like, oh, man, that's going to be really cool. Like, who are they going to get to play? This person, this person, this person. Like, who's going to play Tommy? Who's going to play, and then it died, and then it was, it died again. And I was like, whatever. I just don't see it happening, so whatever. Now it's on the table again, so I'm very interested to see it played out. Having read The Dirt a couple times.
I love The Dirt. I've read it too. It's so good.
Yeah, I think it's one of probably the 5 best, musical autobiographies I'll say I've read. I like the different perspectives. I hope they incorporate that into the movie, if and when this movie's made.
Well, from what I understand, it's going to be released March 22nd of this year. So, if that's the case, like I said, we got a whole week dedicated to Motley Crue and Scooby-Doo. Don't ask me why those two were together. It just happened to work out that way.
I mean, they're two of my favoritely toxically masculine things. So
that's right. All right. I think we've blathered on long enough here. Once again, I want to thank Pat for joining me for a TV party tonight. You've heard the plugs. Join us again for future shows. And we look forward to offending you sometime in the future.
And we would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you. Me, you meddling kids.